So what happens when you combine this with this? Well, you may just have a MoFi killer on your hands. You're going to get more than just equipment and vinyl reviews and talk here. You're going to get occasional stories from me about my past and people I've encountered. And today is going to be all about the boys in Van Halen. All right, so if that's something that interests you, I suggest that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that way you can be notified when I'm coming at you. Thanks for being here. Today is all about Van Halen, as I mentioned, and more specifically, how you can get more Van Halen for less. All right, now to give you a little background about my experiences with Van Halen, I think I was kind of late to the game. I was in the media when Van Halen broke. I've been overexposed to music probably, and so they didn't really hit me as hard then as they do now. I've got a kind of a growing appreciation for Van Halen. Now that I look back and with a little bit of history behind us, I can appreciate that there was no band like Van Halen before Van Halen arrived on the scene. I mean, they were complete originals and changed the game. When the world was going kind of punk rock, they kept it real with rock and roll. You know, I'm a huge fan of new wave and punk, Elvis Costello, The Clash, all that stuff, Sex Pistols. Van Halen was a little bit of a departure from that, but then again, they weren't really for me in the hair band category. There was much more going on with Van Halen than maybe a lot of people had given them credit for, at least initially. So for me, my appreciation has grown over the years. I was very fortunate to have met the guys in Van Halen and Van Hagar on a couple of occasions. I had a good friend who was a record guy, I just say record guy, for Warner Brothers. And he got me into some parties. I also worked in the arena where Van Halen played pretty consistently here in Austin. So I had chances to work with them, around them, buying their advertising, doing their press, things like that. And so I had a chance to go to a couple of Van Halen parties. Here's a picture of Eddie Van Halen putting out his cigarette in my hair. I was honored for him to do that, but it's just a great shot. I'm glad somebody captured it, especially now considering that Eddie's gone. I have this little memento. So one bit of information I can impart on you is that the rumors about the brown M&Ms in the contract rider were true. I did see the bowl of M&Ms at the end of the catering table, and I can tell you there were no brown ones in there. Now, why did they do that? Why did they put a no brown M&Ms stipulation in their contract? Well, I think my theory is that it was a way to see if any given arena was paying attention to what they were doing. If they caught that little thing, then they would catch the million other little things in the contract as well. So I don't know what happened to the arenas that didn't follow the rules and dropped the brown M&Ms in the bowl, but that's my experience, that's the story. And I can also tell you that Van Halen was one of the few bands in my experience working in the arenas for, I don't know, about half a decade, is that they were one of the few bands that actually partied after the show. They had a big giant anvil case that they opened up that had a sound system in it after the show. They would have a room, they would have family and friends, some concert winners, some lucky employees such as myself, and they would actually throw catered parties with music and food and some items on the table that decorum prohibits me from describing to you here. But man, what a bunch of great guys, what a great band. A lot of the rumors that you heard about them are probably true. So if anybody epitomized what it was to be a rock and roll band, it was the guys in Van Halen. So let's get to the main topic of the day, which is this record right here. This is the eponymous, and I like to say the word eponymous, the eponymous Van Halen album. In other words, the title is the same as the name of the band. Yeah, I think that's what eponymous means. You probably already knew that. My apologies if I'm talking out of school. You know, it's kind of a shame that I had many opportunities in my days of radio and concert promotion. I had many opportunities to pick up free records, and I didn't. Records were everywhere. I probably passed on a Van Halen album to pick up maybe Elvis Costello's This Year's Model from the same year, 1978, I believe. But this record here was pretty groundbreaking. And this version, which I found recently, which had this hype sticker on it, kind of caught my attention. A lot of the Van Halen records I've seen in the bins in recent years don't have hype stickers on them, but this one caught my eye. Van Halen's 10-time platinum debut, remastered from the original analog tapes, 180-gram vinyl, lacquers cut by Chris Bellman at Bernie Grunman Mastering. Now those aren't just words, that's a lot of useful information. Now the reason that label has caught my attention because I have pre-ordered some of the Van Halen MoFi one-steps. Now they were advertised in this fantastic catalog. This is the Music Direct catalog. It's one of my favorite catalogs of all time, and I look forward to it every year. It's just jam-packed with gear and records and fun stuff. They've promised the Van Halen releases. Not one of them has hit the shelves. So if you're a little impatient, or maybe you just want to spend less money on a great Van Halen record, I think I have it in my hands. I've given this one several listens and I've been very impressed. Now to put it into context, let me break down the equipment I was listening to it on. I've got a MoFi studio deck with Master Tracker on it through a Technics SUG 700 Mark I, the original version of that digital amp, about 70 watts a side digital, and going into Klipsch Forte IVs. So it's a pretty rocking system. That's the system that, you know, when I really want to get that kind of low end bass and I want to still keep that detail, that's the system I go with, and I thought it'd be perfect for this record. And this record slaps. I took a lot of notes. This Chris Bellman remaster, which I believe, it says here made in the Netherlands, but I believe the cover was made in the Netherlands, and I believe the vinyl was pressed in Germany. It's 180 grams, dead silent. As soon as you drop the needle in the groove, it's pretty quiet. There's maybe a little bit of whoosh going on there between the tracks and at the beginning, where it really doesn't matter. But for the most part, a very quiet, clean, flat, thick pressing. I was very impressed. So we started out on a high note right there. And then when I started listening to the music, it really punched pretty hard. Now this record can be had, and I think it's still out there. Now I don't know if they all have the hype sticker or not, but they can be had for around 30 bucks. Whereas with shipping and tax and everything, I believe the MoFi one-step 45 double disc will run you about 150. How close does this record get you to that at $30? You know, that's yet to be seen. I'm sure the MoFi release is going to be, it's going to be very good. But, you know, there's times where you're looking for value, and really, how good do you need a Van Halen record to be, right? For me, this record sounds a lot like I remember Van Halen concerts, at least on my system. You know, there's a little slight bit of distortion. The sound is just on the edge of crispiness, and which is a good thing for me. I think some people have complained that Alex's cymbal hits are a little sizzly on this, but for me, they were perfect. It really gave the music some dynamics and some energy, much like you get at a concert. You know, when you're in a big arena concert, and Van Halen was a big arena band, and that's the kind of sound that you want. And that's the sound I was getting up in the media room with the Klipsch Fortes. Very much that concert, just on the edge of being crispy, on the edge of, not distortion, but just on the, like it could just break at any minute, but it doesn't. It never does. This record doesn't. And I played it at extremely loud volumes, and you know, at those loud volumes, you could get the spaciousness of the music, the spatial aspects, and again, it just feels so live. Now, I know it probably wasn't recorded live because of the amount of overdubs and things that Van Halen did, But, you know, put together on this record, on 180 grams, Chris Bellman, it's such a, for me, such a great remaster and could save you a whole bunch of money. Here's some of the notes. The sound extended far beyond the edges of my Klipsch Fortes. The sirens at the beginning of Running with the Devil, I mean, that's your first clue that good things are about to happen. Eruption was very spatial. The drums had great punch. You could even hear Eddie's tubes in his amp humming, which is very, very, very cool. You know, and then comes one of the highlights of the record. You really got me. That just slaps so hard and sounds so great. You know, my only criticism at listening to the beginning of the album and even throughout is that Michael Anthony's bass, I wish they could isolate it a little more. I don't know what the hatred was for bass players in the 70s and 80s, but I feel a lot of them, a lot of the great ones, Chris Squire, a lot of the bass players were kind of mixed to the back. Maybe not so much Chris Squire. He was featured pretty well in Yes albums. But you know what I mean? It's like with this new Revolver release that just came out and the new remixing of that and Peter Jackson's technology where he could isolate instruments and things, really bringing Paul's bass into its own as a separate instrument, not just mixed in with the drums. I wish they could go back and do that with Michael Anthony's bass. I think that would be so cool because the drums are so pronounced. David Lee Roth's vocals are so pronounced. You hear every crackle, every breath, and of course Eddie's guitar. You can just hear the texture of the strings and all the effects that he's using. Just amazing stuff. And then so you know, you just go through all the tracks. This album almost plays like a greatest hits. It has so many good songs on it. But I think the highlight for me, outside of Eruption and You Really Got Me, has got to be Ice Cream Man. And I know it's kind of a throwaway novelty song in a way. I know it's a redo of an old maybe blues song. You know, it's as close to an acoustic Van Halen song as you're going to get. And you really kind of hear that texture of Eddie's strings on that. And then when it kicks in hard, and you've got all the subtleties in David Lee Roth's voice. Listen, you know, fight me in the comments below, but to me, this album proves that Van Halen was better than Van Hagar, you know? You like what you like, but man, I just think of the concerts that I've seen. I've seen Van Halen maybe 4 or 5 times in my life, and I think of the Van Halen concerts versus the Van Hagar concerts. They were all good, but there was something about David Lee Roth in the day, that slight bit of craziness and danger, those chaps, the jumps that he would do on stage. Van Halen always put on such a great show, and I wish I'd had more appreciation for it at the time, but I was listening to a lot of music back then, and not everything was hitting me as hard, you know. But now looking back, and again with the advantage of history, I can see that Van Halen was an amazing band, and I'm very appreciative that I've got to hang with them at a backstage party a couple times and really kind of see their personalities in action and how much they loved doing what they were doing. And I'm sure they were fringe benefits as well to what they were doing. And I can't say enough about how much this record impressed me. Van Halen, the eponymous release, Van Halen from Chris Bellman. Look for the CB and the Dead Wax, and look for it in your local record store. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed my little Van Halen story. Don't forget to like and hit that notification bell. We'll see you back here in the...